Hello, Kathryn and Patrick. I see you there. I'm going to put on an intro real quick so we can share. This is going live from my Facebook page, Todd Medina, and it'll be premiered on YouTube right after the show. So if you're on Facebook and you want to share it, you can go to my page. It's live now, and share it if you'd like. I'll pull you up in just a second. This is our 20th and final show of the week. Tomorrow is Todd and Morgan Day. Just want to say, everybody, thank you for your continued love and support and contributions. We are on Patreon and PayPal. We need all the help we can get to keep this thing going. But somehow or another, it always works out every day, as it does for all of us. We got a special show. This is a second couple of the day. I'm going to give you a little background. Kathryn and Patrick Andries. Hope I said that right. They are both authors and public speakers. They've been teaching and studying metaphysics for over 20 years. They're co-authors of the book Naked in Public, Dreams, Symbols Revealed. Kathryn's other books include Soul Choices, 6 Paths to Find Your Life Purpose, Soul Choices, 6 Paths to Fulfilling Relationships, The Big Desire and the Big Dream. The Big Desire and the Dream Doctor. Patrick is author of Owner's Manual for the Mind. They are passionate about spiritual education, and they co-founded theintuitiveschool.com. They host a weekly 1-hour radio show called Spirit's Journey, where they discuss spiritual solutions for everyday living. So let me get them up here so you don't have to look at my face the whole time by itself. Let's see. How's that?
Start my video. Can you hear us, Todd?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Fabulous.
Thank you, Patrick, for lowering the camera so we didn't just have to look at your forehead. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm excited. It's our last show of the week, and I'm really excited that it's with you guys. So thank you for sharing space with us and coming in and honoring us with your presence. And
glad to be here, Todd.
Yeah. You have great energy. Where are you guys at? Are you
in the Kansas City area?
What's that?
Kansas City, Kansas.
Oh, you're in Kansas City.
Yeah.
I got a good friend that lives in Kansas City. I think I saw her on here earlier. Yeah. So we might be passing through there before too long. You never know it. You
Awesome.
never know what's
This is a great area. We really like it.
Yeah, it is. So you guys have been in the game for a long time.
We have been through the ups and downs before the internet and everything.
Before Ascension was even a semi-household word, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And so have you been together during that 20 years as well?
A lot of it.
Yeah,
So,
we've been married 18. We met.
This will be our 18th anniversary this year.
Yeah, we've been together about 20 years.
Congratulations. well, we'll round that up. That's pretty much the same time span. So yeah, we would like to, Morgan received the intel to start loading up the show with some couples for this month. So we're trying to dig into some of the ins and outs of that. A lot of people are tossing around, the words twin flame and soulmates and this and that, and it doesn't take away from the reality that there seems to be something occurring that is being generated by a frequency of couples coming together. So I guess you guys are going to have a pretty good perspective on it since you've been together so long. Let me ask you: Did you wake up together? Did you?
No, we had both started on our own paths when we were in our young teens, like 12, 13. So we had been studying already, and then we actually met at a metaphysical school. We were studying together, so we were both already on the same page, which I think is what helped us a lot. Is not like one grew and one didn't. It's like we were already there. We were looking for somebody else who was already into the metaphysical realm.
I think that's one thing that really helped us out early on, is that we both have been growing personally. And so I think that early on, neither one of us really would have been a good fit probably if we'd met younger, even though we keep talking about what it would have been like if we'd been able to meet younger and stuff like that. But
I still would have liked you.
Me too.
That's what I tell my wife, That's what I tell her. She would have liked me then, but she keeps saying no, she wouldn't have. But so there's so much that happens in what people are calling the awakening or the ascension, and even considering everything that seems to be going on right now. And I won't mention anything in particular because I'm tired of hearing about it and reading about it. But the emphasis seems to be, and it's not unique to this time, it seems to be all about self-realization, self-expansion, self-empowerment. Which also another way of saying that is handling your own shift and not concerning yourself with things outside yourself, which are basically a distraction, whether they be another person or event or whatever. Have you gone through some of that together, or has that been mostly an individual trip when you were together or when you weren't together? The inner work, the shadow work, the self-responsibility, self-reliance of the soul, that type of thing?
Well, I would say before and during. I mean, it's a never-ending process. And so for me, I think some of the more difficult phases I definitely got through before I met Patrick, which was a good thing. It all actually prepared me for him. And so, but of course, we got together. I think more of the challenges were outwardly with our business, weathering the ups and downs of having a metaphysical business, which is a very niche area, right?
Mm-hmm.
And surviving in a world of, materialism, trying to do spiritual things. I think we've encountered a lot of our demons and own personal weaknesses through that. But that's what we've had fun working on together is, okay, well, how are we going to get through this next part? And so it's been before and during, and it continues.
I would say that I went through a lot of growth before we met, and I think a lot of that prepared me for this kind of a relationship where I would be, ready to go deeper. One of the things that I think makes our relationship really strong is that we both have an ideal that is bigger than each of us individually. It gives us a lot of common ground, but each of us also has our own individual ways that we show up for that. So for example, she is a lot more into astrology and numerology and those different intuitive sciences, and I'm more into like the metaphysics end of it, of visualization and meditation and dream interpretation and things like that. But we also have a lot of those things in common. So I can communicate with her on that astrology level. She can, she works with visualization and obviously we both meditate together at times. But one thing I like to tell people is that the awakening is not a one and done type of deal. It's not like you just, one day you have this great realization and then you're finished. So we've gone through plenty of challenges together. And, one of the biggest ones, we had a school in Chicago. And so we had done a big expansion and we had set up a building there where we actually had our own space where we could have classes. And then, around 2008, things started to slow down. So it was a challenge. That's one of the challenges, to talk about, keeping things moving. And, while people were changing the way that they did things, people weren't coming out for classes during that time and things like that, like they had been before. And so we also saw the trend that a lot of people were moving to do more things online. And we thought, well, this would be a great move for us, because we were limited to kind of like a 20-minute radius. We realized, people only wanted to drive so far to do stuff in person. And so we had people contacting us from different places, but we really didn't have anything to offer them. That's when we started doing more of our classes online and things like that. And, there's always challenges. And I think that you learn through each one of those. And we've gone through, some individual things as a couple, but when we have that bigger perspective that we're spiritual beings, that there's more to life than just what we're physically experiencing, I think that always gives us a bigger context to put everything in. And so it's easier for us, I think, to move through any of the challenges that might come up when we look at things from that perspective.
And I do believe that similar lessons attract. And so we have a lot in common, and so we have a lot of strengths. We also have some similar lessons. And so luckily, we have awareness of what those weak spots are and lessons. Otherwise, I think a lot of times what it turns into is the blind leading the blind. And two people with similar lessons, if they don't get it, or one of them, they're going to crumble. But even though we've had similar challenges, because we're aware of them, we can help each other along.
Yeah. And then the common mission, I think, is a big deal. We had Michael James Garber was on early this month without his partner. They'd been on a couple of times, and he was talking about the ups and downs that him and Ron would have. But the one thing is, every day they would get up and they had this joint purpose, and there was always, kind of I guess the relationship is the mission within the mission, but the mission's still the mission. And
right.
And it's nice to be able to do that. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. With all this talk about masculine and feminine, divine union within ourselves, if you look at the light worker groups, ascension groups or community, I think it would have been in like 2015. There was a lot of posts about the divine feminine landing and spreading her wings, and she wasn't going to take this shift anymore. And and it kind of went. The pendulum swung back to the middle, and then you saw a new masculine kind of emerging. When it comes to navigating this whole thing and having this mutual mission, who leads? Has it changed? Has it altered? How does that work?
That's kind of a hard question to answer, because I think it's more that each of us has certain strengths.
Yeah.
And so he leads with his strengths and I lead with mine. So I would describe our relationship as very complementary, just even astrology wise. He's a lot more water, I'm a lot more earth. Well, water nourishes earth, earth gives direction to water. So I don't really see either one of us, being the leader. When it's something that I know well, I kind of take the lead there. He's the tech genius. Just today we had a tech crisis during our own radio show, and he was in there to save the day. And so that's how I would view it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that kind of speaks to what I was talking about earlier, that even though we have this commonality between us in terms of our spirituality, we each have a different way of showing up for that. And so I think that each of us really has a place where we can shine. And so, like when she's working with the astrology, like people come from her from all over the world to get astrology readings, for example. But then a place where we come together is we do intuitive readings, we do past life and health readings. And so we actually use a technique where we work together as a team. So she actually goes into the subconscious mind and retrieves the information, but I'm the facilitator. So I actually guide the process when we're doing this. That's something that we can actually do together as a couple, which I think really brings us together.
Yeah, my wife is an energy practitioner, has been for about 20 years. And we do some work together like that, where we both work, on one side of the session with the client. And so that's a nice was kind of a nice surprise. I didn't know that was going to be part of the equation, but both energies, yeah, both energies being present, I think brings a lot to the table. There's a lot of talk too about whether you're with someone or not. These becoming more obvious energies that are occurring or being pounded into the earth and into our bodies. And people talk about our carbon bodies are transforming to a light body and so on, and it can be somewhat disruptive and uncomfortable, physically, mentally, emotionally, and so on. Do you guys ever experience any type of imbalance or out of alignment? And if so, what's your approach as a couple to kind of bring that back into alignment?
Well, because I deeply study relationships, and I understand when something is bothering me and throws me off balance, something that he's doing, I immediately have to look within myself and say, what is this triggering within me? And I have to deal with it within my own self to get us back into balance. It has nothing to do with him. So I'll just tell you a funny little thing. So when we first got together, what bothered me is, there could be all this stuff that needs to be done because I'm like a doer. And he'd be sitting on the couch, fine, the fact that there were things that needed to be done, but he was relaxing, and it would really bother me. And I would have to stop. And I said, wait a minute, I've been working myself too hard. That's why it bothers me that he's relaxing. Mm-hmm. And so then I would work on myself. And the more that I would relax, it didn't bother me anymore. And then he would actually take the reins and be like, yeah, we got to get going and do something once I step down. So, whatever pulls me off balance, I try to work with it within myself instead of pointing the finger at him and saying, hey, you got a problem here.
I think that's one of the things that really helps our relationship flow better, is like what she was describing, is that we're not quick to point the finger at each other. We always look inside, and even if it is something that we're having a challenge with, and sometimes when you're looking at the problem, you're right here, it's like, okay, I don't see where it's going, but we can actually talk to each other and say, this is coming up, what do you think's going on? And even interpreting dreams, we were interpreting each other's dreams this morning, and that gives us some insight into what's going on in our consciousness. And so we can talk about these things openly, and that really helps us avoid getting some of those dramas that are common in relationships. But even if the drama does start, like she was talking about, within either one of us, we're pretty quick to be able to find that solution. It doesn't mean, we don't want to try to play ourselves off like we're always perfect. Sometimes we have those lessons and they come up and we have to work through it. But it gives us so many tools, understanding metaphysics, understanding our true spiritual nature, like you're talking about. And just to speak a little bit more specifically to your question too, I think both of us have probably experienced some of those times where the energy shifts, and sometimes we'll be going through something and then maybe it's something we're not even aware of at the time. And so we find out about it. We're like, oh yeah, okay, that's what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And so over the years, I find that our diet has continued to get more and more pure, or at least, as good a food as we have available to us. So we eat all organic foods. We avoid anything with artificial colors, artificial flavors, preservatives, any of that kind of stuff, trying to keep chemicals out of our body, trying to keep everything as clean as possible. And so, it's not that there's one diet that's right for everybody, but I would say that intuitively I've been guided to, keep taking steps to clean up my diet. And so it seems like as time goes on, I kind of reach another level, and it's like my body's like, okay, time to clean it up a little bit more. You thought you were doing pretty good, but you need to get a little bit more pure here and there. And so I think it's just listening to our bodies intuitively and being willing to make those changes as they come up. And as we take care of our body physically, I think that also helps us with those energetic transitions that come up. Yeah. It's a little less dramatic when you are clean, and meditating too, making sure that you're meditating, keeping your vibration at a nice high level, I think helps smooth those transitions out too.
Yeah, you mentioned meditation earlier too, and I wonder, and that you meditate together. And I would assume you've been doing that for quite some time. It seems like it's a lifestyle for you, part of your lifestyle. Have you had any, to the common to the common human experience. Have you had any dimensional experiences or anything that kind of jumps out that was kind of otherworldly when you're in these meditations or any other time?
Well, I don't know if this is otherworldly, but just on a practical level. So our schedules don't always sync up to be able to meditate together, but last night was an example of one that it did. And so we both had these really profound dreams. Yeah, we don't remember our dreams every night, but for the most part, at least a couple times a week. But last night we both had these vivid dreams, and like you said, we woke up this morning and we were telling each other. I had him, or he was in my dream. I wasn't in his, but it was very significant. And I think that that's just, on a practical level, when you meditate together, you tend to sync up more, like in the dream state, for example. So that's one example.
Yeah, and for me, I would say I've had a number of different peak experiences over the years, and I've come to think of those a little bit differently because, I think sometimes when peak experiences show up in our lives, there's a couple of different reasons they might show up. Sometimes we're actually being shown something that we're not really ready to maintain in our lives. We're not ready to hold that level, but I think it gives us a carrot. It's almost like, this is what you can be. This is where you can go. And that peak experience changes our consciousness. And so I found every once in a while I have a peak experience, kind of like what you're describing, this otherworldly kind of mind-blowing experience. But then I come back and I find that a lot of times my life outwardly doesn't seem like it has changed that dramatically. I'm like, hey, what's going on? I had this amazing experience, aren't I supposed to be enlightened? So over the years, I've realized that the awakening process is this thing that every morning you have to get up and recommit yourself to that awakening process. And to be honest, any one of us, no matter how much progress we make in our life, if we start making those choices that take us back into the darkness, we can fall asleep again just as easily as waking up.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So I found that the whole awakening process is very dynamic and very responsive to our daily decisions. And so I think those peak experiences give us like this star to guide us by. It's like, hey, this is where you can reach. But then we have to kind of come back down to earth, make those daily decisions that are leading us in that direction. And, we keep using that star to guide our journey. But, it's the daily work that we do that I think is really the most important in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the universe kind of has a credo of, what have you done for me lately?
Yeah. That's a great way to say it. Yeah, that's great.
Well, and the reason I brought that up is because many people, more and more every day are coming out with these divine episodes, divine intervention, connections with star family, divine essences, things like that, channeling, light language. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff going on, and it's becoming more and more common. But when two people are experiencing the same thing, this is kind of a new twist on that. It's one thing to go through it yourself and then try to tell people about it, and everyone tells you you're crazy. But to actually be cohabitating with somebody for 18 years, where you're both committed to connecting and expanding every single day. That's why I asked it, because it comes in many different ways. I mean, nobody's experiences are the same, but I was just curious as to whether there was some type of symbiotic connection or relationship with your personal connection to the universe, almost like the two of you are one, connecting together. I don't know if that makes sense, or if you got anything to add to that.
It does make sense. And I guess the answer may not be as simple, but I would have to say that I experience our relationship as being very easy. It just clicks and it works. And I think that's a sign that we are working as one, like what you were talking about. And when I look at things from a spiritual perspective, as a soul, our mind uses the aggressive energies and the receptive energies. And I think that's what starts to express as, either male or female, or, we were talking about aggressive and receptive energies and things like that earlier. And so we aren't, pinned to just one thing or another, because we actually have both within us. And I think, like what we were talking about before, that we have this kind of an ebb and flow depending on like whose strengths need to come out at that time. And I think that helps us flow. And so, we tend to try to keep everything focused on a very practical, kind of a down to earth level, and I know there's a lot of things out there that are, going into extraterrestrials and things like that. And that isn't really our area of expertise. That isn't where we focus, even though we've encountered those kinds of things on our journey just because of the field that we're in.
Yeah.
And so of course we're always going to have contact with that. But what we've come to realize is that our missions jointly really revolve around helping people to connect with their inner self, their life purpose, and how they work together in relationship with each other, and fulfilling their mission. And so that's one thing we've gotten a lot of feedback on, that one of our talents is to be able to help people connect to their mission and fulfill it and their life purpose, but without trying to like insert our own agenda.
Right.
And,
right.
We've seen that in some cases too, where people want everybody to get all excited about their mission, so they're trying to enroll everybody, sort of into their mission, and that sort of sometimes I've found hijacks individuals' mission, because they didn't really come down here to do that. Maybe they came down to learn from this person, so that they have the tools they need to move on to do their next step. And sometimes it's a little bit tricky kind of making that transition, because they're so involved in this other person's mission and excited about things like that. Yeah. So I think that is kind of tricky. Sometimes it's like really staying true to our own mission, why we came here, what we have to offer, what we wanted to learn, and then using these other experiences to help us on that path, but to still kind of keep clear on why we're here.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so on that note, mission, why we came down here individually, collectively, you said that you guys do some of the work that you do is what did I hear you right? Past life regression, was that one of them?
Well, no, they're past life readings, the Edgar Casey style readings.
Yeah.
So we do the readings for others. We don't regress people into that.
Okay, so you do the reading for others. I'm just curious because it's been another kind of I don't want to say a cottage industry, but kind of a byproduct of some of the information that's been coming out and going back to like Dolores Cannon or even Edgar Casey. People that work with people, with the volume of work that you must have behind you, sometimes are given like collective information through their clients, and they kind of piece them together. I mean, do you ever come across anything like that? Like what's happening collectively, to what's going on, or more clarity on what's going on?
The way that it usually comes out in the reading is the reading is always for the individual requesting it. But oftentimes what will come out is if there's a suggestion for that person or something they're struggling with, the reading will elaborate on how so much of humanity is also struggling with this. And this is the way out. But the readings are really individually focused, which is, for that person. But it always, if it's a big issue, it will talk about how this is something facing humanity and how much of a need this person's strengths are in this area.
Yeah, I would say that I probably get a little bit more of that than she does, because I'm facilitating the readings, and so I get to listen to everything that's being given. And so there's a lot of times in the health readings or the past life readings both, that there are lessons that come up like she's talking about that are obviously something everybody can really use. That's kind of more where that universality comes in. And a lot of that information, the wisdom that's come from our intuitive readings, I have applied to our lesson material in our courses and things like that we offer. So there is that kind of a transition. I haven't really experienced the kind of continuity in terms of delivery like you were talking about with Dolores Cannon, because actually our books are published through Ozark Mountain Publishing. So we had the privilege of getting to know her before she passed on. And
Wow.
she was an amazing, amazing woman. And yeah, so her work, she would work with one client after another, and she would get the kind of continuity of information that was coming through all her different clients, which was pretty amazing. But that was her mission. I think that was her gift to the world. And so, like I said, I've found over the years, ours just has a little different turn to it. And so we always ask for the most significant past life reading, for example, because some people are really interested in, was I this famous person or something like that. But our readings are always focused on, well, what's really the most important thing to you in your life right now that you need to know and understand. And so it always comes from that perspective, whether it's a past life reading or a health reading. And so it's always from the individual level, but then I think it's more just me in that process. I'm almost like an intermediary, where there's a lot of those lessons that I've been able to take out and kind of apply in a broader sense.
Well, and you said it too. I mean, it is for the individual, and as the individual goes, so goes the collective. You've kind of alluded to that a while ago. That some of the things that are characteristic for the individual are characteristic for us in general. Now, when you do these sessions, and you facilitate and then you connect, I guess, and are you working with specific faces of the universe, like specific divine essences, or things like that? Are you?
We would describe it as going into a deep, so he puts me basically into an unconscious state. And so when one understands the different levels of mind, basically I'm going into those inner levels where beyond the conscious mind, once we get into that subconscious area, there is no barrier between me and the information that's stored in the Akashic records.
Right.
And so I'm not working with a particular entity, or I'm not a channel. I am tapping into those Akashic records for the requester, whoever's requesting those.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure my guides and so forth are helping me through the process, but it's not specifically connecting with any particular force out there, except, the vast subconscious astral plane.
One thing that is pretty interesting about the readings, though, is that typically when we do the reading, the information comes out, we see this, so it comes out in the plural. And so, there's no way of knowing from one reading to another exactly who all is involved in that plural, because it could be a combination of her and the person receiving the reading, or maybe even the person's guide is there kind of giving some guidance, or maybe even including me as well, since I'm involved in that process. But there is this collective, and since it's all coming from the subconscious mind, that's that level of consciousness where we all are interconnected in that common mind, that universal mind. And so there is this kind of a collective, and it's really fascinating during the readings, because like as one quick example, every once in a while I've had some little technical issues, like one time, the battery would run out. And so I would actually just have her pause, and, I'd have to go get the battery and switch it out because it unexpectedly went out or something happened. And so then I would start up again, and she would just pick up where she left off, almost like just hitting the pause button on a recorder or something like that, So I think that's where people get this idea, like when people do past life readings, a lot of times there's this image of the book of records or the book of life.
Yeah.
There's some ways I've heard people describe it. And even sometimes people doing readings talk about when they give past life readings, they see themselves going into this huge library, and they pull out the person's book and they open the book and they read from the book. And so what I've learned over the years is that the conscious mind is trying to interpret and make sense of what they are experiencing. And so people will describe it different ways because it's their own conscious mind trying to comprehend what they are experiencing. But there is this kind of a collective sense to it. And so very rarely, but every once in a while, we've had some instances where information was withheld from the person because it was said that the person wasn't ready to hear the information. They might be ready, if they follow the suggestions of the reading and prepare themselves, that they could be ready down the road. but at that particular moment, they're not ready to receive it. So I don't know always who is that making that decision. Is it the person receiving the reading who makes that decision? Is it the person's guide? So what I decided though is I decided not to pry too deep into it, because I figured it isn't really important who it is. The information is valuable. You know, we've gotten a lot of feedback from people on how it's helped them. So I thought, well, you know, there's no reason to really tamper with it and try to dig into that. It's just if the information is not, you know, going to be given right now, just encourage them to make the changes, and then, you know, they can get the information later. So that's kind of where we go with that at this point.
Yeah, yeah. There's also people talking, or the subject coming up of the sacred sexuality, and I'm talking, of course, at a, you know, let's call it a 5D or higher dimensional level, being that our power is founded in our lower chakras, and, you know, in one of the things that you know, call it the Kundalini, the Chi. One of the things that these relationships seem to be bringing to the surface is the power of that creative energy. Have you noticed any type of evolvement over your 18 years in, you know, in your intimacy? Not, I mean, just in a general way. Do you receive any information? Are you shown things? You notice any type of elevation, especially these last couple of years? Anything like that?
Well, I was going to say, I think the biggest thing that I would talk about was our daughter, bringing her into the world. My husband was the one that said, "Oh, you know, let's start having kids," and I was a little bit nervous about it. And so we began the process of, you know, considering having a child, and we began communicating with this soul before she came into being.
Wow.
And it was just an amazing experience. And so, you know, when we were ready, it happened like that. And she was brought into the world 9 months later, and it's been this amazing journey. She definitely is so connected to our mission. And so I think that because we were so in tune with each other, and started, you know, this whole process of thinking about bringing an entity in, and what could we offer this soul instead of just, oh yeah, let's just have a baby. That to me was amazing. And she's been perfectly healthy. You know, I had textbook pregnancy, not that other people don't, but I think that all plays into it, that, you know, it was this planned thing, and we came together on it. That's mostly what comes to my mind.
Wow.
I had an interesting experience along those lines too, as we were preparing to have our child. So I was at a sacred fire ceremony, and at one point after we had greeted the fire and we had done some work with it, the shaman said, "I don't normally do this, but I feel like somebody's had a vision. So if you've had a vision, would you like to share that?" So I spoke up, and I'd actually, during the ceremony, I had looked up on this precipice, and there was this coyote, and the coyote was howling. And then all of a sudden the coyote came down and was beside me and looked up into my face, and I could see this real kind of playful look. And then the coyote became a Native American elder, and the elder said, your firstborn will be a great one." And that was the vision. So then I looked up coyote and what kind of quality of energy. And so the coyote is known as being kind of playful and mischievous at times, and you know, has this really kind of playful energy. So, you know, when we had our daughter, you know, she can be like that. She has that kind of energy, and I recognize that little spark in her eye from the coyote. So I think for me, that was how she first appeared to me.
Wow.
And Kathryn had a little bit more kind of like direct telepathic communication with.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, but now how old is your daughter?
She's 13 now.
Wow. We'll come back to that. So, so, because I think that's important. I mean, these kids are, you know, we've had a society built for thousands of years on and there are elders, don't get me wrong, but there seems to be mounting evidence that these younger people are carrying a higher frequency, and basically we can just stand next to them and pick up some code and gain further alignment. So it's an interesting thing to kind of dig into. But now you mentioned that you were communicating and connecting with her when she was in the womb. Now, was this one of you, both of you? And what was, just give me an example or an anecdote about that. What was that like?
So, so I was, I think, in the first trimester, and of course, being a mom, going to be a mom for the first time, I was nervous, you know, about all different things. Would I be a good mom? Am I up to this? And so, you know, I had all these anxieties. And so one night I was just by myself in bed, and she started talking to me, and she's like, "It's going to be okay. It's going to be so much easier than you think." And that's the only words I remember. But then I remember going into this state of just peace. I was not worrying. I was not anxious. It was just like, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It was just amazing. And then after that, I really lost the nervousness and the anxiety about it. And of course, she was right. You know, I had an easy pregnancy, easy delivery. I mean, you know, never had any problems with her really. And so I was like, oh yeah, she told me it was going to be easy. It was going to be okay. So, and then after that, you know, there were different conversations about her name, because we went back and forth about different names. And finally when I thought I found the name, we actually named her after the midwife who delivered her. She, you know, we talked to her about this name, and she was like, that's it. You know, I did the numerology on it. So we kind of chose the name together, which was neat. But that was the most profound communication that I had with her.
Wow.
And early on, Kathryn needed a little bit more encouragement to even bring her in. She was a little bit hesitant to go into that, like she was talking about. And so one of the things I remember is I'd already had this vision at the fire ceremony. So I'd already had that first contact. And so I was kind of ready. And I was, like she said, I was talking to her about going ahead and having a child. And she was still a little bit reluctant. And then one morning she woke up and she said, oh, I was just talking to our child. And I think she kept referring to her as she. I think she identified her as a she even at that point. And she said, oh, let me come in. It'll be fun. but it worked, because it wasn't long after that she's like, okay, I'm ready. So, you know, she just needs a little bit of encouragement, and she, you know, kind of decided to go for it pretty quick. And so her first two names are Jewel Rose also. And so when we were looking at her name, and so the lotus, Jewel of the Lotus, you know, the rose is kind of like the North American version of a lotus. Right. And so that her name ended up being Jewel Rose.
Wow. So needless to say, she's had an impression and an effect on the consciousness that you share, the energy that you share. And in fact, yeah. And so you also mentioned that she's supportive, or something to that effect, in terms of what you guys are doing. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, she, you know, has never said, oh, that's weird or whatever. She, you know, she grew up in this, you know, when she was crawling around the floor of our first school where we were doing readings and, you know, drumming circles. So she's been around all that. So, you know, it's not weird to her, and she's not embarrassed to tell her friends, oh yeah, my mom does astrology, because usually her friends are like, oh, that's cool. Can she read my chart? Which is kind of neat, because kids are really interested in this stuff. So she just kind of goes along with it. And if we're like, hey, you got to be quiet, we're doing some reading, she's like, okay. And, you know, we've had some readings done on her, and I've done her astrology chart, and she thought that was really insightful. So it's been really fun. And, you know, there's never been a struggle, but, you know, we've never tried to like shove it down her throat and said, you know, this is what you have to think, and this is the right way. I've always just been like, you know, this is just our life, and, you know, she's just gone along with it. And I think that's been an important part of it.
Wow.
And to be honest, you know, things have gone differently than we originally thought they probably would, or what we had envisioned. You know, I think we were envisioning either homeschooling or having her go to a Waldorf school environment or something like that. And that just never has really worked out. And maybe that was part of what she was looking for, because she is a Gemini. And so the Gemini is the twins. And so sometimes that's seeing the different extremes. And so we always are looking to be an example to her at home, you know, just doing our spiritual work and being diligent with it, you know, keeping on with it, even when things get challenging, you know, just keep taking steps forward. And so we're that example at home, and that shows up in things that she says, because she'll just talk about things and you know, I think one time she made a reference to reincarnation or something like that. So, you know, I know that the things that we do and talk to her about are making an impression on her, but then she also has this totally sometimes contradictory experience when she goes to school, because she's been public schooled instead of going to one of those alternative environments. So she has this completely different environment, and sometimes she comes home and we see what an impact that environment is having on her. But I think in the long run, maybe that was part of what she came in for, so that she can see that dichotomy between the two worlds. And then it's her job really to make the choice. You know, we can guide her, but we can't make the choice for her. So I think it's just for us to always be there, as to be an example of a path. And I think, you know, I have definitely seen, for example, the lifestyle choices that we've made. Our friends who are our same age, and some of them even younger than us, you know, the health challenges that they're going through. And, you know, it's like, you know, we've been able to remain, you know, pretty healthy through our life. And, you know, when we do get sick, it's pretty minor. It only lasts, you know, a few days and things like that. So I definitely see a difference in our lifestyle choices and how that's made a difference in our lives. And I think she does too. So she has those two examples to look at. And so I think maybe that's her path, is to make that choice to see the dichotomy and then decide where she wants to go.
You know, some people, including myself, because my early years of awakening, I had an 11 and 12-year-old, and the years beyond that, girls. So the fact that she's a 13-year-old girl in the first place, I mean, you should be in the Hall of Fame for that alone. But a lot of people talking about these kids, particularly the younger ones that are coming in now, but even, you know, a little bit older, operate in a different frequency, and basically a frequency more center, and kind of a somewhat of a role reversal energetically, where they're impacting the parents to kind of pull them back, you know, if they go too human. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? I don't know if you guys run into that, but is there anything that she does that kind of pulls you back, or makes you even think a little bit differently than you did?
I think that children are always going to trigger the parents. They know where to get you. And I think that that is what I experience, is she will push my buttons, but in a good way, because it's something I need to look at. So when I get upset, or, you know, I have to stop and say, wow, why did that affect me so much? So she brings up a lot of my issues. And I don't think we're special in that regard. I think every couple that has a child or children, they're going to be triggered by them, because everybody is a way, you know, triggers us in different ways. And our own children, we're going to be with for at least 18 years. So we're going to choose the ones that are also going to help us grow, and also vice versa. So I don't think that makes us any different than anybody else. I think the difference is that we recognize, instead of just saying, oh, this kid's, you know, making me so mad, it's like, oh, what is this child showing me that I need to look at within myself, and what do I need to work on? I think that's the
bingo.
Yes.
Yeah. And from my perspective, we have some friends who have children who have had these like kind of spiritual experiences, or they say something, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're saying that as being so young. And I kind of took your question to kind of be that, where, you know, maybe like a spiritual wisdom or something coming out. And it's been a little bit more kind of like what Kathryn was saying, where, you know, one of the things that I've really noticed that I don't know if I would have been aware of if we hadn't had her and been with her every day, it's just the effect that technology is having on these kids growing up. There's almost like this addiction that they're developing. And we didn't really want her to be exposed to electronics until probably about middle school. But then our school district went to this one-to-one initiative where they put a device in every child's hand in the whole school. A lot of schools are going this direction.
I remember when that happened.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was third grade or something. She came home with this iPad, which is basically just like a big cell phone.
Yeah.
You know, it's connected to the internet. So she was always wanting to be on it, always wanting to be on the internet. And then this became just a big part of her life. And they were coming home and talking about different things they'd experienced on the internet. Some of these things were not things that we would want a third grader exposed to, because the school district was a little bit slow getting restrictions on there. But the other thing is, a lot of these kids are very tech savvy, and they find ways to work around the blocks that the school districts put on there. And so once they figure it out, it's only like a week, and then every school kid has the code, you know, to get around it, you know, so pretty much they can bypass any kind of block or anything like that that the district puts on. So, you know, it's just been amazing kind of watching the effect that the electronics has on these kids as they grow up. They're addicted to being part of this virtual world, continually staying connected. They feel like if they don't get an instant response, that the world is going to end. You know, they're used to instant feedback, instant response.
Sounds like some of the adults that I've run into.
Oh, yeah. And so, you know, I've never really been that fixated on the electronics and stuff like that. So it is good for me to kind of be able to connect with that and see that firsthand, because it is something that I'm dealing with my clients. And
absolutely.
And people, when I go speaking and things like that, it's important to know about that. And so I think she's kind of, you know, giving us this window into the world. And like Kathryn was saying earlier, we're not trying to push her in any certain direction, because we want her to be able to understand her mission, her purpose. And we don't want to make assumptions about, well, you know, you're supposed to be this yogini, you know.
Let her develop her own rhythm.
Masses. I mean, if that's not her mission, you know, we want her to be able to follow her mission and allow it to unfold. So we'll just be here for her as guides and offer her resources as she needs them and asks for them. And she does sometimes ask us for things. And so we provide that as she's ready for it and is open to it. And, you know, that's the main thing we're trying to do right now, is just, you know, be there for her.
Right on. Yeah, that's a new rub on it, though, where you can look at your kids and look at, well, the same thing you said about, same thing Kathryn said about, you know, at the beginning of the show, taking in whatever you're doing, taking it into herself, you know, and that same thing, you know, working with the child. I'm gonna do something I don't normally do, but I want to just plug this because I think it's important. Everything is synchronistic. But let me just, before we go any further, I'm just going to put this up real quick. You know Sandra and Alan. I believe you spent a little time with them.
Oh yeah,
we love them.
Twin Flame Divine Fire Radio Show, TFRlive.com. Morgan and I are going to go on with them in about 10 minutes. And I just want to let everybody know, you can also listen in, let's see, or call in at 213-233-3998. It's on their page, it's on my page, on the Soulogy pages. And I just wanted to let everybody know that. And I apologize for taking up a few seconds of the show.
Oh, no.
Can you guys just let us know before we head out, how can we find you? Do you have anything going on that you might want to announce?
Yes,
anything like that? Yeah.
Sure. So our website is intuitiveschool.com. Intuitiveschool.com. Also, I have my own website where I kind of focus more on my life purpose and relationship stuff, and that website is masteryourlifepurpose.com. Starting on Monday, I have a free 5-day relationship revamp challenge. So the focus is helping couples. It can really be used for any kind of relationship, but specifically with couples, if you feel like things have been getting kind of dull or you've been getting in a rut, this challenge is for you. You can sign up for the challenge at intuitiveschool.com under the events tab. And starting Monday, every day, there's going to be a free video with assignments to do. There's daily prizes, and there'll be a big prize at the end, and it's only 5 days. So that's coming up. And that's the big event actually in Kansas City. Anybody who lives in this area, we're going to be at the Light Center in April doing live past life readings. So again, go to intuitiveschool.com under the events tab, and you will see that listed. It's, I think, the 3rd week in April. So those are some of the things we have coming up.
Very cool. Very cool. And if you get a chance, I don't know if you guys are on Facebook, but if you could put, this will be on YouTube in 30 minutes as a premiere. If you want to put your links up, you're more than welcome to do that and make it a little bit easier since we've become such a user-friendly society now. You know, but yeah, so it'll be on Facebook. It originates on my page, but it's on many other pages, and then also on YouTube if you'd like. It's been a pleasure. I'd love to collaborate with you guys in the future. We just barely scratched the surface, and maybe we'll meet up in the flesh sometime this year.
Yeah, sounds great.
Good. Thanks, Todd.
All blessings to you and yours and your beautiful daughter.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Peace out. Thank you so much for coming in.